The main attraction in those years, the same as it is today, it's still the water here. It's the healing water that attracts people to come here, more so than the dancers. The dancers will complement everything, and it'll bring a lot of people in too, but they basically come for the water. The healing water is the big attraction here.
The Lake Manitou, of course, is a native Indian term for God or Great Spirit. A native tribe was passing through this area, and they had some members of their band were sick, and they decided to leave them behind. And they left them on the edge of the lake in a fever and in very poor health. When they returned through this area, they found 3 healthy individuals, and the story was that they, in their fever and delirious and whatever, they wandered into the lake, probably drank some of the water and so forth, but in any event, reportedly recovered and were healthy. And the native bands, of course, consider the lake to be very sacred place from a point of view of health. In the early days, this lake was more actively promoted as a health resort, and many of the people came here because of ill health. So Dr. Stipe recognized that there was a benefit to a lot of these people who came here, and he set up a health clinic where the patients would have hot baths, massage, and various treatments of one kind or another based on the lake and based on the minerals in the lake. And people came here because of the health thing. But not everybody has a health problem, and so people, of course, look for recreation, and it became, through the 20s and into the 30s and keep going, it became much a recreational area. At one time, there were 3 dance halls operating at one time. Dances were on every night of the week, except Sundays, of course, because the laws of the day said there were no dances on Sundays. So they actually used to start their dances at midnight on Sunday, which was technically Monday morning.
And I can vouch for it because I used to come here and dance when we could dance on a Sunday midnight frolic, and we danced till 4 in the morning. And that every weekend, those 3 dance halls were jammed full of people.
And this was a booming place. Of course, the world economy was booming in the late 20s and so forth, before the time of the Great Depression. So this was a very busy resort. This was one of the prime Western resorts, along with places like Banff and so forth.
Winnipeg had a big colony of Jewish people there, and they come up here by the hundreds, and they made their home at McLaughlin Beach. These people coming out of Saskatoon on a special train to watch us on Sundays, they come to this beach here where Danceland was, because it was called Saskatoon Beach. And both beaches were jammed with people. You couldn't, well, you didn't drive around the beach. You come here and parked your car, if you got a place to park it, and parked it, and you walked.
And of course, the mode of travel in those early years was the trains. So they had trains coming from Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, Winnipeg, and all the short-run trains here too, maybe from 50 miles, 100 miles away. They'd have special trains bringing people down here during the summer months. And of course, in those years, this was only a summer resort. It was not a year-round resort. And there were so many people here at the time, we could never find parking down along the lake. We had to get way up on the hill before we could find parking. And I remember that quite distinctly here, and I would say that there were 10,000, 12,000 people here at that time.
Well, we always used to say, you know, when you lived in small town Saskatchewan, come summertime, it was pretty quiet. You weren't going to school and so forth, whereas Manitou Beach was alive. It was pretty exciting because you knew people from far away from these bigger centers. We became perhaps a little more citified than some of the other rural communities, but as soon as the summer was over, and the summer in those days, the season lasted from about the middle of June until Labor Day. And on Labor Day, this place would still be packed with thousands of people. The day after Labor Day, which was a Tuesday, school started and there was nobody here. It was just the people, the regular residents, which numbered probably a couple hundred, 300, and that's all. So in one day, it went from being a rushing summer resort to being a small town in Saskatchewan.
Danceland was originally built by Wellington White out of Moose Jaw. And he built the White's Pool here too. He put up this structure and the White's Pool. And he operated this for quite a while. And the main contractor here built 4 halls similar to this. One was at Grand Beach near Lake Winnipeg. He built the Commodore Hotel in Vancouver. And he built one at Seattle, Washington, plus this one. They all had horsehair floors.
Likely there were drawings of some sort. But if there are other buildings like it that have been built, for example in Manitoba, they may have borrowed the plans or modified it. It was actually built almost as a kind of like a pier, sort of jutting out over the lake on piles.
Well, I know that they built a dam here and pumped the water out and then put in the footings, and the hall was built on pillars. It wasn't a foundation. And then when they got it built, they took the dam out, and we could go in under the dance floor with a canoe and listen to them dance, and we thought that was great when we didn't have any money to get inside. We would go down there or at the back and listen to the people talking up above, and thought we were having a great time. I guess we weren't, but we thought we were.
The Danceland is really interesting. Having been built in 1929, it's the start of a transition, a stylistic transition that happened really at the end of the 1930s. It became more pronounced near the end of the 30s. Buildings like service stations, airports, radio stations, they all utilized a kind of white stucco expression on the exterior. It's often been called streamlined modern because of the horizontal lines and the curved corners. Buildings like the CBK transmitter building in Watrous, which is very close to Manitou Beach and Danceland, is almost an early modernist building. Again, white stucco, but very kind of cubic forms. And I think Danceland represents the start of that trend. It's got this very, very clean, very contemporary exterior.
When they tore down the dance hall that was built on this site, was much smaller than this, they moved that dance floor down to the other beach and put a canvas top on it and called it the Wigwam. That was the Wigwam dance hall. And then the arcade was built, and we had 3 dance halls here at that time, but this is the only one that survived.
But the interior space is really amazing, I think, because of the vaulted roof and the very unique wood trusses that were utilized there. It's always a challenge when you're trying to clear span a large space like that, especially to do it out of wood. I would assume that the trusses were built on site, that they weren't shipped in from somewhere else. So that's likely why they chose wood, so that they could do the work on site. I think the thing that captures most people's attention is the dance floor itself, and the fact that it was a sprung floor with horsehair sandwiched beneath the hardwood.
The floor here is, well, it's about 2 feet in depth. There's a 2x12 joist in the bottom with a solid 4-inch tongue and groove nail. That's basically like any regular structure would have. Then the horsehair are twisted into about 10-inch coils, really tight, like a rope. They're wrapped in burlap. It's wired, and it's lying like big ropes, coils, back and forth every 4 feet on top of the base floor. Then we have another floor below the maple here, that when the weight of the 2 top floors, which entirely rest on the horsetail here, They compress the horsetail down to about 4 inches. And the floor below the maple has stops on it, that when it goes down about 1.25 inches to 1.5 inches, it hits the solid floor below. The horsehair are like the day they were installed. They don't deteriorate unless they're exposed to the elements of the weather. And the horsehair will last forever. The top floor here is maple. It's not nailed. It's just pulled in 4 directions and tied down on the edges so it can't expand. It's still the original floor from 1928.
But the floor is what draws the people, because it's just an awesome floor. You could dance there for 4 days and not get tired.
Because you got that spring, you know, floor moves. And it makes quite a difference for dancers. Your legs don't tire.
Won't you come home, baby? Won't you come home? She cried the whole night long. I do the ticket, honey. I read the ring. I know I've done you wrong. Remember that rainy day I threw you out with nothing but a fire to go. I know I played and that is shame, baby, won't please come.
One thing I remember was they were called Jitney dances. Our floor was roped off except for 3 areas where the dancers could go onto the floor. And they'd have to pay 10 cents every time they went for a dance. And I can remember buying those tokens here and dancing that night.
It was 10 cents a dance, 3 for a quarter, or 15 for a dollar. And my earliest remembrance of was the fact that there was ropes between all the posts to keep the people off the floor.
This is the rope that they used when they had jitney dances, right?
The original ropes, yes.
The original rope and the original hooks on the pillars. We keep these hooks here just for showing the tourists what it was like. They roped off from pillar to pillar. They only had 3 openings, one in the center, one on either side, where the people could get on to dance. But they had to have a ticket before they could dance.
Nobody was allowed on the floor unless you were dancing. And you danced for the 10-cent dances. The orchestra played two spells of music, and then Dell would come on the floor. Tickets, please. Circle, promenade the outside, and they'd collect tickets, and then they'd give you one more little spasm of music, and your dime was gone.
Everybody danced in the same direction around the outside of the floor in the jitney dances, and there was no charge to get in. You could come in and listen to the music, and there were marvelous bands, of course, in their day. You could sit there and listen, then you decided you found the girl you wanted to dance with, and you get up and dance with her.
Dell was floor manager, and if it got quiet and nobody was dancing, Dell would hand out some free tickets to the better dancing girls, and then they were very popular. We were run on them like a flock of wolves and get free dances. So once we started dancing, the crowd would start dancing again. And that's why he kept the floor full of people. Not that he made an awful lot of money, but nobody made any money in those days. Through the 30s, as hard up as people were, we had a good time.
And the beauty of a jitney dance is they could dance with the girls in this hall, and then they could go to the next hall and do the same thing again, see what kind of girls were at the next hall, right, Arnold?
Oh yes, right, yeah. I did that myself. I walked from one hall to the other, and I found some very good looking ones. Yeah. for Danceland and Manitou itself, there were 3 halls going here 7 days a week during the summer months. Every weekend, those 3 dance halls were jammed full of people. And they had bands, live bands playing every day during the summer season. And there were basically big band music like we call it today, mostly horns. And I can remember coming here like and dancing to different bands. Lots of local bands around. Clem Gallowitz for one was a very favorite band down here. In fact, he was the house band here for a whole summer, I think. And then we had the Harmony 7, and Don Messer was here on numerous occasions, being he was Canadian. And Mart Kenny and his Western Gentlemen were the top band in Canada. And he told me personally himself he played 13 times here, and this was always his favorite spot to come to. And we do get Walter Ossinek, the Polka King, here now every year, and he's been here for about, oh, must be 12, 13 years that he's been coming.
We have played at Danceland for years. We were one of the, what you would call the local band playing at Danceland. We played with the Ted Clausen Orchestra for quite a few years. And then when he retired, we formed another little group. We called ourselves the Decades, and we were still one of the favorites, I must say, around Danceland, so we've been playing ever since.
Well, my memory is that that dance hall has been around for a lot of years, and I had never been in it. In all the dances I played for, we'd never played there. And when I walked in there, I was just so impressed with it. I just thought it was a beautiful place, and I've loved it ever since. I look forward to playing there. You know, the sound is good, the floor is good, and I enjoyed playing there.
My impressions were a little different because I was almost intimidated there because what? Playing in Danceland where Mart Kenny played, and there was lots of famous bands in there, and all of a sudden here, we're in there. Whoa.
I never thought of that.
Ken Peeker was a band leader from Saskatoon. I think at that time he was advertising that it was his Bessborough Orchestra because they played in the Bessborough. And Ken, during the 40s, purchased Danceland and played here on a regular basis throughout the summer. He broadcast those dances back over CFQC Saskatoon. And he would stand there and say, direct from Danceland at Manitou Beach, this is the Ken Peeker Orchestra, bringing you music, and away they'd go.
In the late 30s and into 40s, it was pretty tight here. It was a busy place, but it was a wartime busy place that people weren't free to travel quite as much as they are now. So it was booming from the sense of business, of being busy and having lots of people. But what was happening was that people weren't reinvesting their money, they weren't putting money back into the place. And so once the war was over, the beach really went backwards. It was no longer the prime place to be, and the crowds went down. It wasn't nearly as appealing, and this hall was in desperate shape. And a group of local investors took it over and tried to make a go of it. They had, I think, mixed success. They weren't really financially successful, but they were more interested in keeping it going than they were in trying to get rich. So they tried various things, one of which was trying to hold special dances and so forth. And then I guess in the late 60s, early 70s, and a different group of local investors took over. And we ran it once a week on a club basis. While we didn't make any money, we didn't lose any money. We kept it going and so forth. It was purchased by Vic and Irene Murray in 1981. And they continued with the Saturday night club idea, and they put some more money into it. I think it kind of brought its revival back. They were really quite successful in kind of keeping it going, adding to it as best they could, and keeping the crowd coming. And then Kevin Harcourt took it over, and then Arnold and Millie took it over, and they operate it today. So,
what brought me here in the first place was the threat that it would move to Alberta. And I was the mayor at the time here, and I knew how important this facility was to our community. And when they came here and offered our price and said, yes, we'll consider it sold, but a couple of weeks later, the movers showed up. And then we found out that they're planning to move it to Alberta. They were going to cut it into 3 sections. They were going to put brace walls in and move it in 3 sections. Well, I said, in that case, the deal is off. I'll buy it myself before that happens. And me and my big mouth, that's what happened. I had to buy it to keep it here.
When we took it over, it took me about 2 years to get to every little corner of this building, to clean it at least once. A lot of the decor in here was my idea. I changed the balls, the main balls in the ballroom, because I thought this room is such a big, great room that it needed something bigger. Then what was there was too small. So I've changed that. We've put the LED lights up. We've put icicle lights up that just seem to add to the decor of the building.
Lots of work. We're here 7 days a week. We work 7 days a week. And even on a Sunday, we have to come and clean up the mess from Saturday night, and there's always work to be done. And we do a lot of promoting, marketing, and a lot of maintenance, and lots of book work and office work to be done. We do lots of promotions through the office, mail outs on the internet. We have a web page.
As there's a lot of marketing to do with Danceland. I do a lot of that. We have a part-time office girl that helps me with that. My husband is more geared to PR work.
I'll give you a tour. And I'd like you all to walk onto the floor, because that's what I basically always do. I might bounce you around a bit here. That's what the aim is of the horsehair floor. This floor is floating on horsetail hair, and it's meant to be easier on your feet than on your legs. If I bounce now, you can feel
we
that.
We have very little staff. We have a lot of volunteers. Now, our volunteers are people who are truly concerned about the fate of Danceland, that Danceland keeps going within the community, and so they help us out a lot. We have a volunteer person at the front desk that is excellent, and she loves doing it, and she's worked in a bank before, and that always helps at the front door.
Lake this year now has risen about 3 to 4 feet, I think. Our shoreline came up about 100 feet from where it was last year, and I'm threatened by water damage underneath my facility here, being that it's all insulated in now and winterized, which it never used to be in the early years. It was built as a summer pavilion, and it was built on stilts into the lake. But now that it's winterized, we had to skirt it in and insulate everything. And of course, my insulation is all getting spoiled by the water high levels. And I have the whole north wall, which is over 100 feet, to redo before winter comes. And I'm concerned about the floating ice in the spring coming and doing damage to the facility.
You've got to have people that are hands-on and know what they're doing when they're in a business like this. And that's why, you know, this place has managed to survive and thrive, because the people, you know, Arnold and Millie and the previous owners, you know, they really put their heart and soul into the thing to making it work and spending the hours and the dollars that it takes.
We've got probably the most unique opportunity, certainly in Saskatchewan, probably in Western Canada, if not all Canada, because we have this amazing body of water. Because it's the water that primarily brings people here. Once they're here, they use the other facilities.
The for sale sign that you see outside the building was a decision we made in the fall. We have ran it for 6 years. We sort of know what bands people are looking for. We can help out the new owners, we can help them out, but as far as running it ourselves, it was getting too much for us. the people are a joy. They come here to dance. They enjoy what they see. They enjoy the floor, which we try to maintain. That's what keeps this building famous, is the floor itself. And of course, if something happens to the floor, the rest of the building doesn't mean that much. So that's our main aim, is to make sure that the floor is what people expect it to be.
When the saints go marching in, when the saints go marching in, Lord, I want to be there when the saints go marching in.